Hello, friends, and thanks for joining us on another episode of the Immigrant Experience in America. Today, we have for you Dr. Donato, otherwise known as Danuta Charland, pre-health and academic advisor at Boston University Sargent College. Am I getting that correctly, Doctor?
Yes, Danuta.
Yes. Okay. Very good. She is from Poland, but I don't want to get too much into her detail. I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about yourself.
Yes, so I thank you very much, first of all, for the opportunity to be on this podcast. It's very exciting. So I came to the United States just about 40 years ago on August 1st, 2000. This year, 2026, is going to be my 40 years in being in the United States. So I live in Poland, and I spent my youth and my adolescence and my first working years, and also my first college years, educational years in Poland. And then I moved to the United States. And living in Poland was quite an adventure when I think about it back to my times here in being in the United States, because there was so many different layers to my development in terms of educational development, psychological development, forming the family ties, and especially forming my identity. I grew up in an ethnic area. It's called Kashubia or Kashubia. It's it's an ethnic group in the northern part of Poland that comprises of probably over 600,000 people nowadays. And the population that speaks the language is really hard to estimate, because more and with the onset of increased popularity of propagating the language and then implementing in the schools, the number of the population has been increasing and also decreasing, and it's sort of been an artificial influx when it comes to the language development. Then, so when I came to the United States in 1986, and my story of coming to the United States is quite interesting, and I'd like to talk about that too.
Okay, great. So we'll get a little bit deeper into that, and I just wanted to say thank you for being here. You reached out because you wanted to share your story with our audience, and this is exactly the kind of story that we like to cover. I don't want to give it away, but there's a neat little surprise that I really loved as we spoke casually previously. So basically, your life on both sides of a border, life on both sides of a wall, like literally, because you were living in Poland prior to the wall coming down. And so if you don't mind sharing, if in present day, what do you do and what does a normal week look like for you at Boston University?
Yes, so I'm a pre-health academic advisor at Boston University Sargent College. Um, and I, on a daily basis, I offer advice students on their pre-health, pre-medical career aspirations. So my typical day starts at 5 a.m. I wake up and I take a public transportation to Boston. And at 6 a.m., after 6 a.m., I usually take a walk through the Boston public gardens and listen to podcasts. And sometimes I meet people in the park. Then I go to a coffee shop and I arrive at my desk at 8 a.m. So I feel always feeling energized. I feel energized mostly by the sort of a prelude to my day, which is the walks the coffee shop vibrant conversations with the people. That's what really gets me excited. And sometimes people will say, "What gets you up so early in the morning?" I said, "Well, you have to have a dream to get up in the morning. And my dream is that cup of coffee and the walk in the morning. That's what gets me excited. And the naturally is my job, the nature of my job. I love what I do because I work with the students and we discuss their career aspirations, their grades, their um, general academic progress. That's something is really exciting to me because that's something also I can relate to. I consider myself sort of a long life learner and a student, and I also feel that having had a sort of a broad educational background, I can speak from my experiences and offer them solid advice. That's what actually gets me very excited about my job. And I also, in addition to daily meetings with the students, team meetings with my colleagues, which are exciting, also meeting with the faculty. Um, I also participate in a variety of extracurricular activities outside of my work, but then they pretty much always focus on people, meeting students, meeting faculty, meeting staff.
Very good. So you love people. You love getting out of bed to walk and interact with the community. And then you spend a lot of time talking with students and guiding, and then you're meeting faculty. So most of your day is interacting with people, and that fills you with good energy. So you're an extrovert.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So take me back. I know you shared a little bit a few moments ago about what it was like growing up, where you're from, but tell us what it was like growing up in Poland while the Iron Curtain was still standing. Paint the picture for someone who never lived or understand what life is like in that part of the world.
Yeah, it was quite interesting because I think there was a lot of red tape and lots of censorship. I remember, but interestingly, I grew up on a farm, and that area, sort of my early childhood, was very, I would say, almost idyllic because we didn't think about the politics at that time. But as the times went on, um, the politics guided everybody's life, and it was present in every aspect. Present in the farming industry. It was present in schools, in the government. It was everywhere, and was very interesting because I think when even for my high school years and then later even early, even my college years, we have to be very careful how we presented our ideology, our ideas, our political views, because that would be something that we could be for speaking up our mind, and if it wasn't something that would align with the governmental ideology, we could be um, literally sentenced to jail for that. And I remember my early college years, um, when I was in school, there was a one faculty professor was collecting names of students and was organizing a campaign to join solidarity movement. And that was still during the Iron Curtain. There was a difficult situation for me because I didn't want to join, although I will say that I was a proponent of the solidarity movement, but I really didn't know what to do because in a situation like this, if um, you on the open forum decide to sign up for some kind of a political list, then there could be repercussions could follow in the future. That was something I wasn't really in a favor of. However, the professor ends up collecting the list of all our students because really we were forced to do that. And then he disappeared for a while. We didn't know what happened. It turns out that the professor was interned. So he was never to return. And I think he stayed in prison for 3 years after that. So these were these sort of situations. And after I graduated from college, I attended a business college. I ended up going to teach in elementary school. I was an elementary school teacher. And I remember one day I was visiting my brother, and who was a student at the time in the University of Gdańsk. And I was visiting him, and after we did a little bit of chit chat, I was returning to the bus station. We took a shortcut through a forest that was occupied by the National Guard. We didn't know that, and I remember this very moment that the National Guard stops in front of us with armed with their machine guns, and they say, "Stop! If you don't stop, we'll shoot you." And I'm thinking to myself, wow, but I need to go back home because I'm going to teach kids. And who's going to teach the kids if not me? So this was going through my mind. I'm thinking about at that particular moment. I'm not even thinking about my family. I'm always thinking about, but who's going to teach in school? So these were the moments of the Iron Curtain that were the most, I think, the most prolific and most dramatic events in my life that took place. And
Wow, wow. And quite a different world from many of us who are from the West.
absolutely.
Quite a different world. I know we have people from Cuba might have similar stories, but that seems like I'm not sure if I want to say like passe, lifestyle like that. But there's so many people who are talking about their experiences, and it really does add to us who are on the other side to somewhat appreciate the freedoms that we have, right? It's so important. So I
Exactly.
understand you mentioned earlier that your family has roots in Kashubia,
Kashubia,
in the
Kashubia, yeah.
Kashubian region, a culture with its own language and identity inside Poland. Did
Yeah.
that did that add any other layer as to you feeling like having some sense of what belonging meant even before you left Poland? What was that like for you? Did you stand out in the country or did you blend in?
Yes, absolutely. So I think that in Poland alone, being a Kashubian was very interesting because I remember that this is actually something that also my mother relates to it. We were as Kashubians, or Kashubians, especially people mostly who were the village, lived in a farming area, we were discriminated. And the discrimination was quite vivid. My mom recalls situations that she would go to the local store in the nearby town, purchase products, and the people would recognize her somehow that she was Kashubian and she was from the village, and they would hide some of the products away from her. And she liked to sew things. She was I won't say she was a seamstress, but she liked making things from fabric. So quite a drastic experience for her. But it also my identity as a Kashubian was always that was something that I always was strongly aware. We cultivated that language. We spoke it at home every day. So in the home front, I only spoke Kashubian with my mom and also with my grandparents, with my father. Maybe sometimes with uncles we also spoke Polish language, but the only way in the form of a conversation with my mom was always solely Kashubian language. So I we were never really taught how to write in Kashubian language in elementary school and high school, but that's something that I am a self-taught. I also am a poet and writer. That's a skill I developed over the years.
Okay. Can you give us a sense for the relationship to the back then the Soviet Union, like being Kashubian, like how are you guys closer to the Russian um connection? Like where give us some roots as to where this
Yeah,
Kashubian
actually,
culture was alive.
sure. I think that that particular in the relationship to the Russia or to the Russian border, um, the the Russians didn't have mind so much that we were Kashubians. If there was any kind type of a conflict, it would have been solely for the fact that it was a conflict between Poland and Russia. So the language would not have been Kashubian language in that particular case would not have played any part in it. But for me, as my form in the forming of my identity, Kashubian was the first before I became Polish, because my Kashubian identity was formed at home when we always spoke Kashubian, and then the Polish language is something that I was taught when I went to elementary school.
Okay, I see. Okay. So how are you different from a regular Polish person, because for somebody like me looking at you, I'm thinking, okay, you're from Poland. You look like Polish. You look like a Polish person. So how are you, aside from the language, right, which is specific to your ethnic group? How are you
Yes.
different? Do you phenotypically look different from someone to,
No, I
from
think I'm the
Poland?
same. It's just the language. It would be the language difference. But I'm also, because when I went to elementary school, I started speaking Polish, so I'm very fluent in Polish, and that's the language that it's a national language. So it wouldn't be really that much of a difference, with an exception of my own maybe identity that I identify.
Okay. And aside from language, what are some things that make you different from a regular Polish person? Is it the way you eat? You mentioned that your mom did, like, is it some fabric work, textiles?
Yeah, I think mostly it would be the our think our belief system, our hard work, our probably stubbornness. That would be something very important, and also would say not being stubborn in a way that not budging, in a way that refusing to comply with certain norms. For example, the language norms. It goes back to the times when my grandfather would go to the office or to a store and was speaking Kashubian language, and the officials would frown upon him not speaking Polish language. That was the difference that I think that defined us. We're very stubborn people.
Well,
So
that's your
that,
culture, right? That's how you guys communicate. That's how you all communicate. So you can, I guess there's many groups around the world who try to hold on to their heritage, their culture. So we completely understand that. People can lose their identity and lose themselves and who they are and so forth. So I get that.
and I think one important part of it was my growing up years, that Kashubian language is something that wasn't taught in the elementary or high school. It was frowned upon. So we were, even in the elementary schools, we were encouraged to speak Polish language. So we kind of have to hide the hide our heritage. I just recently found out from my mom that her older sister, who joined, I think she joined a monastery years ago, um, had had to hide her heritage, where she came from, because if she had people had known that, even in places like a monastery, people have known that she came from Kashubia, it would have been frowned upon.
Wow. There is always that story that seems to be a line in so many countries. When will we just get along and accept each other?
I agree.
Just a quick second. I'm going to change something here that is, I have uh, something on the screen that's showing up against your face. And actually, we're going to stick with that one. I prefer the way it looks now. Okay. All right, so let's get to the meat of the story. I think most people want to hear. So you met your husband through a pen pal letter. Do you all remember pen pal? I remember writing pen pal letters when I was in, oh boy, like middle school and older. Wow, but over the years, as we moved around, you kind of lose track of it. And but it was such a neat thing to do. So tell us how you got into that story. Whose idea was it, and how did your first letter come about?
Yes, that's, thank you for asking. So the Penpal story, it was my English professor's idea. I remember one day I was in high school. My English professor comes to school and writes on the blackboard, International Pen Pal League of Boston, and he was one of these people who was very encouraging students to learn foreign languages. He had studied. He was a Polish man who had spent many years in UK. When he returned, he knew that the importance of English. So he would say, "You have to learn English, and the only way you can do this if you write to somebody and then expand your language ideas." because we had very limited resources in Poland to learn other languages. So I remember that I was in my second grade of high school. Probably I was 15 years old, and I wrote down the address. Then I do not exactly remember the date when I wrote the letter, but I remember sending the letter to the International Friendship League of Boston. Then my name is Danuta, and I'm whatever years old, and I wrote about my interest, a very brief letter, and the letter ended up in this Penpal ship organization in Boston. And my now husband had been friends with another man in his company who had told him about this organization, that he met a um, nice person from another country, and he was writing to her. And my husband said, well, I'd like to learn more about it because I'm interested in World War II. And I'd like to go to Japan, or maybe Poland, where these countries are were huge players in World War II, and I'd like to maybe meet somebody, and that would be a good idea to meet somebody through this pen pal ship. So he um, basically bought my address from this organization. I think he paid $2 for it at that time, because the organization clearly had to survive somehow. So he purchased my address and wrote me a letter. And then it was in 1981, and then I received the letter, and then we were corresponding. We corresponded for about 4 years before we met. And the rest is the story.
Wow. So at what point did it start developing into something more than just two people across the world exchanging information and their lifestyle and what life is like in the world that they're living? How did that develop? Did it start before or after you met in person?
I think it started when we were writing letters. We started at the beginning. We began to develop a relationship. We felt we were getting a little closer to each other. And then he decided that he wanted to come to Poland and visit the country and see, well, visit the country, and then obviously meet me, and we'll meet each other.
Oh, nice. Oh, nice. Oh, man. So when I heard your story, it really did make me feel like, how did I lose track of my friends through the pen pal program? Like, what happened? I don't even remember, but I remember I did have a pen pal when I was in high school, and but moving abroad and so many things have happened since then. So, but I love to hear these cute stories. It's so heartwarming.
And on the sidebar, I'm still pen pals, friends with with a woman who I met in also the same year through different channel. I think that was through my college years, when one of my friends gave me her address. She lives in Japan, and we have been still corresponding now on the Facebook. I
Wow.
never met her, but I met her daughter, and I met her friends.
Wow, very good. Very good. Thanks for sharing that. So, what was it like meeting him for the first time? Did the story on paper, did you all exchange photos? Did you know what each other looked like?
Yes.
Like what was it like meeting this person for the first time? Like back then, right?
Yeah.
1981. I don't know what technology was like in your country back
So
then.
So at the time, we didn't have much of a technology. We only had a simple camera. So he had sent me several photos. So based on the photos, I was able to judge. But I remember what was interesting, the first time when he was supposed to come, I went to Warsaw, and I'm waiting for the airplane for the person to show up, and there's no person to. I'm waiting, and then there's no person to show up, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And now, is this just a hoax? What will happen? And turns out that his plane never landed. That he never landed on this plane because there was a problem in the United States with traveling. So the airplane that he went from Boston to New York somehow was diverted due to the stormy weather. It was in July. So I went back, and then I remember waiting at the airport and trying to figure out if I recognize this person. But then the airport people finally announced that that person wasn't on the plane. So I went home, and then just as I got home, I traveled home on by the plane. And just as I got home, I the phone came, and my husband was calling then and said that he apologized he couldn't come in because the airplane was delayed. But then 2 days later I had to go back again and pick him up, and it was a wonderful meeting. He definitely looked different than I expected him. I think he looked I don't know, taller. It was just different. It was the first time I actually heard anybody speak American language like that, American accent, because I never met anybody before who spoke American. So he was the first American I ever met.
That's right, because you were communicating largely through letters.
Right.
Yes. Oh,
Yes.
how neat.
Occasionally, I think we had one conversation on the phone, but it was so minimal. So that was very exciting. I think
Wow.
it was exciting to get to know him. My husband, his name is Tom. Um, about his personality, because he was very like a typical, very outspoken American who would just tell you what he thinks. So my family, we had to get used to his personality. But it was also exciting to know that somebody can be so serious, so outspoken. Some of the men
Yes.
were different.
So you've now been married for, you've said 40 years or more than 40 years.
40 years.
What do you think a pen pal courtship gave you that a modern instant relationship doesn't today?
I think it allows you more time for reflection or for self-reflection, and analyzing things, more for self-analysis or general analysis of maybe studying things more, and more patience, definitely. Delayed gratification, that's something that we probably don't get so much anymore because we just want things right now, and we don't even have time to think of the things we say, the things we type, or things we write or say. We oftentimes think about what we want to say first, and then rather than we are quick to respond rather than quick to listen. And I think in my day, especially with the Penpal ship, could review that letter 20 times before I responded to it. But it also allowed me that at that time develop my writing skills, because I had to find my English wasn't really that good at the time. So I had to find words through dictionary and to verify them to write. So that helped me to understand English better. So my written English was much better than more fluent than my spoken English.
Yes, yes. Wow, wow, that is such a neat thing. I want to do, does that organization still exist? Are young people able to, I know it seems it like it's would be so hard, right? Everything is online today. Does it still
Exactly.
exist? Are people still exchanging through the pen pal program letters with each other?
I don't know if they do that.
Interesting. I'd love to look into that because I'm thinking about my little one and wondering, yeah, how do I slow her down? This technologist has her like the way they're training the kid's brain to just,
Exactly.
it, our generation and maybe others came into this whole idea of just having things microwaved and fast and quick responses. But can you imagine the next generation, the next few generations, Gen Z,
Gen Z.
and I think Gen Alpha is the next one? Oh my goodness, because they've been online like literally since they came out.
Absolutely. It would be a
Wow.
good idea for high school students, I think, to do something like that.
Yes, that's a neat concept.
Mhm.
So, what was the actual process of leaving Poland and coming to the US? Practically, emotionally, what was that like for you?
Yeah, it was a very long process, but and very nerve-wracking, if you will, for the fact that so my husband had to at the time. So we got married in Poland. That was one of the reasons we also couldn't get married in the United States, because I wouldn't have been being from a communist country, would not have been able to leave Poland. And he had to send me something called affidavit of support, a paper stating that he would be supporting me. And that whole entire process took about half a year, obtaining the visa. Um, they would also, I think, check his background, or they were actually checking my husband's background was something that we did before we even got married. They were, the government had to check his background. But the entire process was very lengthy. And upon leaving Poland, and it was also very, I think, for me, when I think back to it, was as much as it was exciting, was also a little bit of a sadness because I was leaving my whole family behind. I was leaving everything behind: my family, my teachers, my friends, my practically my entire heritage, and just transforming myself into different country. But I wasn't really thinking about it in such a deep way that maybe I'm thinking about it now when I'm reminiscing those days. And I think a lot of this was just going on a pure faith as well. Although I met some of my husband's family through letters, so I had some idea. I had some idea where I was going to, but I think the anticipation was also uh, brought about a bit of an anxiety for me.
Yes, I can imagine. So, how did you hold on to being Polish, being Kashubian specifically, while building an entire new life in a new world where you have to now really learn the language, be in a new family, you're now married to someone from another country, and the US is probably back then, how was it compared to life in Poland for you?
So it was interesting because I had this idea when I came to the United States that everybody here is so we. I think in Poland, gender at the time, people had built this idea that when you go to a Western country, you are going to be expected to work very hard right away. The minute you step from the plane, if you get a job, you better be a hard worker. Also, get to know the language, and if you don't know the language, you may fail. And I actually remember this brings me to the story when I was at the. Uh, Somehow I remember that when I applied for my visa coming to the United States, um, I think it was the people in the embassy who mentioned to me, if you don't speak English very well, you will be deported. And I remember that's such a it was such a stressful event for me. The flight from from Warsaw to Frankfurt and then from Frankfurt to New York. Somehow I was told that I need to land in New York City rather than going directly to Boston. Uh, was a little bit of a anxious and an anxiety-driven experience because I thought, what if I don't speak English well and they're going to deport me right from the airport? And which wasn't true. But that so just knowing the language. But one thing I think the positive experience for me was I found Americans very pleasing, very warm people overall, and very welcoming. That's something I wasn't exactly sure how I'm going to interpret it, what I'm going to expect, because again, the stories of people from who had experienced maybe living in Germany or in other Western European countries had different experiences than the ones who had lived in the United States. So I sort of translated my forecasted experiences into what people Polish people had experienced in Europe. So I was very pleased with people's hospitality. That was something that I didn't expect, and personally for myself, I was very pleasantly surprised, and people were very willing to help. The typical question was, "Where you from? And how long you've been here?" Which was kind of nice in many ways. I find it as a positive for myself.
Yes. There is an author out there that talks about that compares the American culture or its people to a peach, and those of us who come from more collectivist culture. Interestingly, though, as I'm expressing that, is Poland considered more collectivist or more Western?
It would be more collectivist still.
Okay, all
They are
right.
sort of on the border, but they haven't they haven't raised to the classification of being considered a Western country, although very well developed country.
Yes, that's why I paused. So the author, uh, it's the book is called Working with Americans, and she um, uses the anecdote being peaches versus coconuts. People from collectivist cultures, like Americans are very, like, when you bite into a peach, it's very soft and it's, easy to get. And then you have the pit in the center. And then the
Yeah.
coconut has a hard shell. With people from collectivist cultures, it takes a while for you to actually get through the hard shell. We're a little bit more reserved, and we have to figure out if we can trust you. Just the cult, like countries like Japan, it takes a lot to do business with places like that, because they have to know that they can trust you, and it goes far. Right? And so, but Americans, they embrace you, you feel the warmth immediately, but later on it takes a while for you to actually get into their inner circle. So I
Mhm.
thought that was interesting. It came to mind as you're expressing the initial experience of just being welcomed and the warmth that you felt in your initial weeks, days, months as you settled in.
But
Yes.
I think one of the interesting experiences for me has been, especially living in a, maybe it's something that I've experienced more because I spend most of my life here on the Northeast, is maintaining or developing relationships, especially in Boston area, because Boston is such a melting pot of all cultures and people sort of come and go. Very Boston and alone, it's a very college-like city. So creating relationships here, it's more difficult. I found that. I think that would have been one of the surprising parts of my experiences to create to find longer lasting relationships of many relationships. And for example, of course, growing up in Poland, it was easy to make well, friends in my community also, but in America, it's more difficult.
Interesting, isn't it? That's an interesting comparison where you felt that warmth and welcome and people are friendly. However, in order to create like permanent, longer, long lasting relationship, yes, that's part of the unveiling that we do here in our program with the podcast, my book. Our discussions is, what it's like to, as an immigrant, to find belonging in the US, because relationships are different long term in the US, and the relationships that you form. And particularly, I was in the DC area for some time, and it's such a transient part of the country where people come in and out for work, and they're constantly flying out, flying in. They go back to the part of the country where they're from. And so you find that you don't really go deep. You might be very wide with knowing a lot of people and very friendly and cordial, but there's really no depth to those relationships, which is partly what you're expressing.
Absolutely. These have been
Right.
my experiences.
Yes. Yes. So if your younger self writing that very first letter could see your life now, decades into this marriage, your marriage of over 40 years, your career, the United States, what would surprise her most?
Mhm. I think on the surface, it would be um, the connections with the people, that they were immediate initially, but then developing them and maintaining them. Those would be my I would say more surprising things. And also, I find what surprised me most would be about the loneliness in America, and I've seen a lot of that among the elderly people. And I think that one of the things I noticed right away when I actually came to the United States, especially in the Boston area, was the, la- the invisibility of the elderly in on the street. You don't see them so much in the society. So I try to figure out where they were, and then I learn about, of course, I learn about the retirement homes or the assisted living or nursing homes. But still, I find that I'm sort of because I'm connected so much in the to the healthcare system, and always talking to many people. I always see that that's something that I am very surprised by. by the connection, by the family connection. Also, many young people, I think, I find are very lonely in the society. I grew up in, and again, in something that um, in the community or going through elementary, high school, college, I was always with my group of people. So I never felt that loneliness. But I even find here, when I'm observing students, many of them are lonely. They don't have the direct connection. I think that's something that I'm very surprised by.
Yes. And there's so many of us, especially in a city like Boston or DC or New York. There's so many people moving around, but there's so much loneliness in the middle of that. It's such a dichotomy, isn't it? My goodness.
And I think
Um,
another way, I think another problem is, I think we have, and then maybe that's a good thing, huge competition, definitely very competitive society. Competition can be good for um, maybe for progress, for especially for business development. It certainly becomes a motivational factor for people to strive to do better. But at the same time, maybe too much competition is not always good depending on situation. There's lots of competition in educational environment among students, among academics.
yes, that's the capitalist system, right? To create the competition, and so forth. That's one of the big tenets. So, looking back, what is something that you wished someone had told you upon before coming to the U.S., like warned you about?
Mm. Um, I think one thing would be good to have a build, if it's possible, build early on, build a network of people. That's something that nobody ever discussed with me. And advocate for yourself, number one, because I came from the culture that advocating would be considered more as a bragging, pushing yourself onto something. And I grew up in sort of very traditional family, maybe Catholic driven religion, that bragging is not a good thing. So coming to America, I found that um, advocating is the very important thing when it comes to being successful in every, specifically in a business um, area. That's something we have to learn. So I think being assertive, having somebody to find a mentor is very important. Also, that's something I many people in Poland might have been my mentors, but not maybe not specific mentor. Uh, so I wish that those are the things I think would be very important to have. Somebody standing in your corner, very important, and also
Yes,
for self assurance, for finding more opportunities.
very good. I'm curious to know if you ever came across another Kashubian since you've been here.
I never did. Nobody who ever spoke Kashubian, but it was interesting because 2 weeks ago when Boston had the Sail Boston, I had met the group of students from that ship Dar Pomorza, which stands for the Gift of Youth. That's actually the ship that when I was in my early years, we were um, collecting money to support the building of the ship. And the group of the students who came, who were on that ship, they were from my region, and many of them understood Kashubian. They didn't speak Kashubian, but none of them spoke Kashubian. But then many of them said, "I understand that language." That was actually the first time I ever met somebody in my 40 years who could understand my language.
Wow. Do you feel like you've lost it, or have you maintained just through communication with your parents and the culture that is Kashubian?
So I would have to say that I never lost my Kashubian language. If anything, I have preserved my Kashubian language the same way that I remember that I spoke it in Poland, and I am still I write poetry, and my poetry is considered very original for the fact that um, it's not I would say crowded with some anglicized words, because in Polish language, and maybe it happens also in other languages, we borrow words from English specifically, and there would be some words maybe even intertwined in the Kashubian language. I don't do that because I don't know those words. So I'm speaking, when I write my poetry, it stays the same, on the same level. If there was any way of me to fall backwards in Kashubian language, it would be that I wouldn't adopt new words because I don't know what they mean. But I preserve my language, and I actually have been pleasing to know from other people that my language stays original.
Yes, amazing. How has your spouse, the US, influenced you over the years? Have you changed? Would you consider yourself to be more American now, like a hybrid? Like, where are you on the spectrum? I'm interested to know.
Thank you. Thank you for asking that question. Definitely. He has been a huge influencer in my life, a very big supporter, specifically for always pushing me for education, always programming me to be independent in case something happens to him. I'm always have to figure out how I'm going to survive. But he was always encouraging me and pushing me to be outspoken, to acquire that American attitude, kind of like fend for yourself and uh, don't be a pushover, go for it, and advocate for yourself. Absolutely, 100%. He's my big cheerleader, I have to say.
Yes, yes. Okay, so he was holding your hand, teaching you how to be more American and all of that. That's so helpful. As you mentioned, you need an advocate, somebody in your corner, and your husband was that for you.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Danko, for trusting us with this story, the letter, the walls, the decades. And this is exactly the kind of story that reminds us that belonging is built one honest page at a time. Thank you for being with us. And but before you go, I'd like to talk about, as I mentioned before in our email, the cultural faux pas moment, if you remember anything.
Mhm.
Um, so this is part of where we get real about cultural missteps, if you will. Tell us what's a cultural faux pas you actually experienced navigating between Poland and the US.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's a good question. So, one of my experiences was especially in New England, you should never go to anybody's house uninvited. And I remember this situation. We were invited to a party, and actually, my husband and I went to it was sort of one of our colleagues at work party years ago, and we were sort of walking around and had a lot of time to spare. We just utilizing having a good time. And we arrived at the party much earlier than we were invited, probably half an hour earlier than we were invited. And the person who was holding the party was very unhappy with the idea that we arrived too early. So my understanding was don't go to anybody's party too early. Arrive on time, or maybe arrive a little bit late. And just don't show up. Don't show up at the party uninvited. Oh, uninvited number one, but don't show up too early. In that particular case, we arrived too early, so I always think about I don't want to be too early. That's something that would never happen. Well, it has not happened in Poland, because years ago we would always go with people's homes. Even now, when I go visit, I oftentimes don't know my schedule because it's very flexible, and I'm also relying on my family members' transportation and other things depending where we are. So our schedule is flexible. So we would just oftentimes just show up at my friend's house, knock knock, here we are, and they will be very happy with open arms. But that sort of that tradition kind of still continues. Maybe not in all circles, we know that because especially people work, so we would make a phone call earlier. But in certain areas, especially in the rural settings, if we kind of use our judgment, it's okay just to show up.
Yes, and it's very similar in a lot of cultures, I think, outside of the West. Here, you have to make an appointment, you have to call ahead, make sure they're home. You never show up at someone's home. If you're new and you're watching this or listening, never show up uninvited to someone's house. Even if you think they're your friend and you want to surprise them, always check. I've known of situations that have gone sour because people just show up at people's doors. And it's an American thing. I can't really explain it. Um, Always make sure you check ahead. Are you there? Or I'm thinking about stopping by, or just set an appointment. Even play dates with our children has to be scheduled. I mean, everything here, it's such a different world in this in the West.
Absolutely.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. That is quite funny and interesting that someone will be I just listened to another interview actually in the she is someone who talks about like etiquette, business etiquette, social etiquette, etc. And actually one of her recommendation it was not to show up too early. I'm always worried about the fact not to show up late because I think a lot of immigrants you know, time punctuality is not a thing that a lot of immigrants have naturally. They have to work at it, right? And so I'm always aware, don't show up too late, make sure you're on time. But I didn't realize that the showing up early was such a big deal. But you experienced it firsthand.
Yes, definitely. And still
Wow.
often talk about it even till this day.
Wow. And laugh about it too, right?
Laugh about it.
Wow. Wow. But thank you so much for being so candid and authentic with your story. I wish you and your husband many more years of pen pal relationship, love, and discovery, right? Because I imagine you guys are still learning. Have you been back to Poland to
Yes, many times, and I went last year. My husband visited many, many times too, so he's still learning Polish, but he's getting better at it.
has the war impacted the country or your family at all?
The war has definitely been had some kind of an impact on people, and emotionally specifically. But I know that, especially several years ago, many Polish people, including my family members, had hosted people from Ukraine and provided them with shelter and food and other things that they needed for survival. But yes,
Okay.
many people from Ukraine now are living in Poland and finding their shelter and also employment.
Yes, yes, I did see that. People were taking bus, and Poland was one of the haven that
Yes,
people were going to. I cannot believe it's been so several years
absolutely, it's way
since
too.
this has started, and it's ongoing every day. And I often wonder, like, what is it like for people who are living in a space where at any point a bomb could be launched and just go off, and someone could lose their life? Can you imagine the type of anxiety? And so we're very blessed to live in the United States where, for the most part, there are places that are unsafe, but for the most part, this is not a thing that we live with. And we must acknowledge it. I acknowledge it. I think I talk a lot about the immigrant experience, but lately I really have been making an effort to recognize the blessing that it is to be in the US where we have safety, security, and bombs aren't going off, and we have somewhat of a just a sense of emotional safety around us every day to just go about our lives. And our hearts go out to those people who don't have that same sense of security. Yeah,
Absolutely, we are blessed to be here and utilize our freedoms. We can
definitely.
appreciate them more when we are here because we know we have what we didn't have in our own country.
That is so true. We know both worlds and we can appreciate the life here even so much more.
And it was interesting because when I lived in Poland, it was very difficult to get an education. And in America, it's so easy to get an education. You just have to strive for it. So even an education is not necessarily always cheap. It's expensive. It can be expensive, but also there are means to obtain it for anyone who desires it. That's something that I took advantage of.
Yes, and likewise, and so many that I know as well. I think so many people are on the other side and they just want an opportunity to be in the US to pursue and to aspire and to achieve things. But for those of us who are here, I definitely know many immigrants take full advantage of spreading their wings and achieving. So kudos to so many who are adding so much value to the US social life, educational system, marketplace, and more. So I wonder, did I miss any? Is there any questions that I did not ask? Anything that you'd like to leave us as we wrap up today?
I think that one important thing is for to be for everybody. I'd like to pass on is be authentic. Be authentic. Believe in yourself. Never give up on your dreams, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Thank you so much. Yes, for sure. We are definitely for authenticity. I know we struggle as immigrants to find belonging, to feel grounded in our identity because we're now in a new world and we have to adapt, assimilate, whatever word people like to use. We change after we leave our birthplaces. And so being authentic at times can mean and show up differently for people who are from other places. And so thank you for underlining that. Um, well, thank you so much for sharing your pen pal story with us here on the Immigrant Experience, Dr. Charland. I wanted to give you a chance to tell us about your authorship and where people can find you online. If anybody hears your story and would like to connect with you, otherwise, how do they find you
Yeah,
and tell us more about your? You mentioned poetry, but I think you have a chapter.
yeah. So I have a chapter in the
Immigration.
book. It's called Kashubian Immigration in the United States, and I can send information. It could be where readers could find this book, and I have a chapter in this book, and also that's my poetry book. It's written in Kashubian. It's quite a normal word, so I can send information also where to find it.
Very
This
good.
these
So
particular
we'll get go ahead, go ahead. Sorry.
these two particular items are sold in Poland, but they also can be acquired through mail order as well.
Yes. Are there English translations? It
So,
looks to
so the Kashubian immigration, yes, that one is in English. There's a Polish and an English version, and the other book is not at the moment. I'm working on translating it into English.
yes, very nice, very nice. So folks will get the details and add those to the show notes. Thank you, Dr. Charlene. We appreciate your time and this lovely, heartwarming story. We wish you the very best.
And thank you for the opportunity to speak here. I appreciate it, and all the best to you as well. Beautiful podcast. Thank you.
Thank you for listening, and please share and continue listening as we share more stories.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you too. Bye bye.
Bye bye now.
Let's see.